What would you say to your 12-year-old self? This simple yet profound question has sent me on a journey back to childhood to find healing for today. I'm Mike Nicholson, a lifelong educator with over 25 years devoted to young minds. I'm here to celebrate those dedicated to the service of young people and to delve into how they navigate their personal healing amidst the childhood pain they witness in their daily lives. Together, we forge actionable steps to kickstart the healing journey for the young people of today. Join me as I speak with teachers, mental health professionals, coaches, and more, and uncover the wisdom they would share with their 12-year-old selves. Together, we strive to build a foundation for healing that many of us never had. So what would you say to your 12-year-old self? A special note before starting, this podcast is in no way intended to take the place of any kind of mental health assistance. We are simply having discussions about healing and learning and growing. If you need mental health attention, please seek a professional. Today, I welcome a guest that I was connected with through mutual friends. I'm excited for this conversation simply because of how excited they were for me to meet and speak with him. I've been warned his energy is infectious. He and his wife, Alyssa, are proud papas and mamas to two beautiful fur babies, Dewey and Nola. He's the defensive coordinator and head strength coach of the Vaux High School Football team in North Philadelphia. In previous lives, he's worked for and been featured on HGTVs House Hunters. He's interviewed the man that revolutionized the NBA and convinced his mom, dad, and sister to jump out of a perfectly good airplane. So I wasn't sure what to expect when I jumped into this conversation. Yeah, we were brought together by some of my oldest and dearest friends, so I trusted them. And I'm glad I did. What came of this was such an engaging and enlightening conversation with a guy who was able to articulate his commitment to service better than I ever could. I was reminded why I started this podcast, and it's because I get to talk to like-minded people. So the byproduct of this wonderful thing is that there are amazing people in the world, and Jordan Hobert is one of them. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Jordan Hobert. Jordan, welcome. Thanks for coming on, your 12-year-old self. I really appreciate it.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. This is a really cool project. I can't wait to get talking to you, man.
I'm so excited about talking to you and about putting our heads together to figure out what can we tell our young people to help them heal, early, but, or before they get to be middle-aged men or women or whatever.
Yep.
So I'm going to start very simply by asking you, tell me about your life when you were 12. Where did you live? Who were you with? What were your friends? Tell me about Jordan at 12 years old.
So I can definitely get that going. I actually talked to most of the people that I'm friends with from when I was 12. I'm still friends with them today. Even before we hopped on today, I actually let three of my best friends from growing up, one I met when I was in fourth grade, one I met in eighth grade, and two I met in seventh grade. So we go way back. We've been friends since then. We were friends through high school, through college, into early adulthood. And even now that we all are, married, having kids, starting businesses, doing all these things together. So I grew up back in Reading, Pennsylvania. So now I live in Philly. So it's about a 60-minute drive. It's not too far. When I was young, I grew up right across the street from my grandmother, which was amazing. Like she's a superhero to me. Like born in the early 30s and moved up here from South Carolina. She was the first person to do that from her family and brought a whole bunch of people up. So growing up across the street from her was amazing. In her house, it was two aunts, three cousins. Next door was another aunt. Around the corner, another aunt, three more cousins. And then that was just the immediate family that my grandmother raised. Then you had all her sisters. So when we were growing up, it was a lot of family, a lot of community. We used to do family reunions every year. So my summers were either spent in somewhere in North or South Carolina, typically Myrtle Beach, or we did a family reunion in Charleston, the hometown of Fort Lawn, South Carolina, which is real back country, not a lot going on. They got their first traffic light back in, I think it was in my lifetime. It was like 2004. So
Wow.
small town is where my family comes from on my mom's side. On my dad's side, we spent a lot of time here in Philly. So my dad is from Philadelphia, and my cousins actually still live in the house that my pops grew up in. So
Wow.
one of the houses my dad grew up in, I bought a place with my wife, a stone's throw away from where he grew up, and then the other house he grew up in, my cousins still live in today. So my roots are split between Philadelphia and Reading. In
And the
between,
South.
yeah, and the South, and
Yep.
definitely the South, definitely the South.
So when
So
you
yeah,
grew
what
up
else do
in,
you want to know?
no, I'm just curious about when you grew up in Reading.
Yeah,
Was it was it was it for lack of a better term, was it segregated? So where you
that's a
lived
great
was
question. Yeah, so where I grew up, again, like I said, I used to live across the street from my grandmother. That's not where I lived when I graduated. So when I was around probably 8 or 9, we ended up moving out to the suburbs, to a school, Wilson School District, and it was a culture shock. I'm not gonna lie. It was different. It was different. Like where I grew up in Reading, like I said, it was a lot of family. It was only 15, 20 minutes apart. So it's not like I moved a big move, cross states, couldn't see family and friends. But like when you're a young kid and there's not public transportation, you're not seeing your friends every day anymore. So you start making new friends. And it was just a lot of cultural difference, right? Like one thing that was weird was like where I grew up before, everyone just called me Jay or Jordan or Jordy Porty, pumpkin pie. Shout out to my cousin Brittany. But like I used to just be called by my first name. And as soon as I moved out to Wilson, it was a lot of last names. So that was even different. Just like, what do we talk about? What do we bring to school? What do we leave at home? And like learning those things on the fly as a kid was a challenge.
yeah. So you're saying the big difference where was Reading was an urban lifestyle, and then
Mm-hmm.
you move to a more suburban lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you go to high school out there in this Wilson school district, and you played sports.
Yeah, I mean, technically, if you ask my friends, I was a 3.5 sport athlete. I was a 4 sport athlete in my mind. Football was probably my, it was definitely my favorite sport. Wrestling is probably what I was best at. And then I did track, and I also played a little bit of lacrosse for a couple weeks.
That's why that was your fourth sport.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I had to stop playing because I tried to do a K turn. That's another story. Tried to do a K turn in my dad's garage with my dad's new car. So
Oh,
I no
okay.
longer play lacrosse, but I'll let him come on the podcast and tell you that story.
So you go to high school now. Is the high school? I'm very intrigued personally by
Mm-hmm.
the high school experience and the middle school experience, only because much of my professional life
Right.
was in there, and was much of the impetus behind this podcast was the young people of today in schools and what they do. You mentioned bringing with them to school and leave home from school.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That has just something that has been forefront in my mind for the past couple of years. I retired a couple of years ago, early, because it was just too hard anymore. And so I'm curious about your middle school and high school experience. Did you struggle? Did you were you awkward? Were you really popular? Were you just fly under the radar guy?
Well, Mike, you said that you worked in a school for a long time. You know that everyone, at least in middle school, junior high school, is awkward.
Yes.
Even into ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, we're all awkward. And also, thank you for putting in that hard work because I know as I'm entering into this stage of my life, I'm taking more of a leadership role within the local school here as a
Right.
coach and as a mentor, and wherever I can fit in. Um, I know how demanding that job is. I see it from people that I've built friendships with, relationships with, and it's not easy. It's incredibly important. I wish that it was treated as such
No. Yeah.
because there's people like you who want to make an impact. There's people like me who want to make an impact, but sometimes it can be really taxing.
It's really taxing. You know, where I worked, it was the thing that really drove me out was the culture wars. We were the front lines.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting is people I meet now, because I worked in the suburbs
Okay.
in very white areas, and I would talk to people about that, and I would tell them like this was really hard to do because I had one person on one line telling me I'm a racist, and I have another person telling me that I need to make America great again, and that's what my life was. And you forget you
Yeah.
don't get to take care of kids anymore, right? But I find
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
people from here work and sit in the city, that they're surprised to hear that that's what you're dealing with in the suburbs. That's where it's worst, you know. So I guess my question is, like, did I can look back at high school now and go, man, I was just anxious every
Yeah.
day,
Yeah.
right? I look back and go, oh my God, I was so insecure, and I just was embarrassed and had so much shame about so many things. Is that, do you, when you
Yeah, I
look
connect
back
with
at
that.
it?
I connect with that 100%. And I wonder what people would say, like if we had, I'm gonna date myself real quick, but like I'm coming up on my 15th. Yeah, dang, 15 years. Yeah, our 15-year anniversary from graduation is actually going to be in 2024. We graduated 09, so that math checks out, right? So 15 years later, I wonder what people would say. Because like now our stories include our full selves, right? Like it includes that 12-year-old self, but it also takes into account 12 to 32, 33, like we are
Mm-hmm.
now. So, everyone's going to kind of be somewhat impacted by what people ended up doing after high school and the people you followed along with and what's happened since then, which is a good thing because that gives you the full story. But I'd say that 12-year-old me, like I was one of a very small number of black kids at a majority white school. I was in the band. I grew up having asthma. I was allergic to the grass. I had to wear a back brace. But at the same time, like I took control of what I could control. All those things were not in my control, right? Like I was born with a condition where I couldn't play football for a couple of years. I had to wear a back brace and like go to physical therapy as a fifth to eighth grader.
Wow.
All I love, like I started playing football when I was in kindergarten. Like my dad was my first coach. Like 4 or 5 years old, I put on a helmet for the first time. So from when I was 5, like basically the time you start to remember anything until fourth grade, I identified as a football player, and that got taken away from me from a young age. And that taught me a lesson. Like that taught me a lesson that like you got to enjoy every snap. And when I came back and I could play again, like that was something I did. Even I didn't play past high school, but like I coach. So I take every snap, every moment with those kids, every game, like it could be someone's last, right? Like you never know.
Yeah.
So
So
I would
that,
say that I was a combination of like a person who was outwardly confident, but like, dang, it was hard some days. It was
people
hard.
don't realize how hard it is. I mean, people do realize, they all lived it, but I
Yeah.
think it's
It's hard for
so
everyone.
hard.
I think that's sometimes what people don't acknowledge, don't remember. Other people don't tell you. People try to hide it from you. And I think, like I said, I grew up with the same homies I have now. Like it's because we've built relationships that we open up and we talk about this stuff. Like some of the conversations we've had, man, we've aired it all out. Like we've had beef between each other. We've verbally fought. We physically fought. Like, but we figured out how to come back together from it. And like going on a bachelor party with boys I played junior high, middle school football, elementary school football with. That's a blessing to me. Like
That's great.
that's a
That's
really,
great.
really cool opportunity to have.
So you said you went to high school and you played football, and
Mm-hmm.
but you didn't play after. So what happens? Where do you go after high school?
Yep. So I graduated from high school, spent the summer working, and then I started at Temple. So that's what brought me to Philadelphia. My time at Temple was amazing. Met some great people, met my wife, played rugby, was in student government. Like I stayed pretty active, and got exposed to a whole new world. Like it was cool to be an hour away, but also feel like I was a world away. Like I
Yeah.
could get home if I needed to. Like I could hop right on the Greyhound bus, or whatever that cheap mega bus was. I used to get that dollar mega bus from 30th Street and get
Hmm.
back home if I needed to. Eventually got a car so I could go back and forth. But it was nice to be away, but also have the safety at home, not too far. And
Yeah,
I think those are
that's
the
nice.
types of things like when I'm talking to kids now is like, hey, like what kind of experience do you want to have with college? Do you want to be able to get home? Because kids will say, hey, I want to go to Miami or I want to go to Colorado. But like, do you really? Because that means you're coming home. You go to Colorado, you're coming home once or twice a year,
Mm-hmm.
not whenever you want. So
Yeah.
a lot of things to take into consideration at that age.
So you go to college, Temple. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
huge fan. I work there actually,
Oh, that's what's
and
up.
I work with student athletes there actually,
Okay.
with their academics. I've become a huge champion of what Temple is. Um, uh, it's this what it means to that neighborhood and to this city is not sold well enough to everybody, and it's a shame because it is a I find it to be an amazing institution for what their goals are and what their mission is. So I'm proud to be I'm proud to be a part of it.
Absolutely.
Proud to live in the neighborhood. Like that's everything. So
Absolutely.
what did you study? You leave high school and you go, all right,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go do this.
Yeah,
What
that
did
was
you study
easy.
when, and how did
I've
that set you up?
always, I've always been obsessed with learning about the human body. So I took anatomy and physiology in high school and flipped that and went right into kinesiology. So the study of human movement. And again, like whatever you spend your time on becomes part of your identity. And that was a huge part of mine. Like I took pride in that degree that I earned. It's, I think, unnecessarily difficult. Like the classes you have to take are very in depth. Especially, I was planning on going to graduate school for physical therapy, so that's a doctorate program with 3.5 more years of school. So you took chem, organic chemistry, you took physics 1 and 2, you took bio, microbiome. Like you took some like I was in classes with people that were going to school for med school.
Mm-hmm.
So like some of those classes were pretty tough. But like you said, there's so much else around as well as the academics. Like obviously I did well, put my hard work in the classroom, but I think what I learned most from Temple is like you said, just being in the neighborhood, the location, the history of Temple, Philadelphia, the access that you have to culture, people, places, and things, museums, art, music, any nightlife. Like the access to the Broad Street line is crazy.
Yep,
You
it's
can go
great.
north, south, east, west of Market Frankfurt. Like you can really go out and explore. And I think Temple gives you a lot of opportunities to do that.
So you go and you go to I guess was health professions. I guess was that your
Yep.
major? Like I work with a student who's
Yeah.
just failed anatomy and physiology. No,
It's
it
not
wasn't my
easy.
fault, but I was working closely with him and I watched him struggle. And he came out of Harrisburg. He was not ready. Like he's a young
hmm
kid. He just wasn't
hmm
ready. And that's just an aside. But I saw personally how hard that is, especially for a kid who's 18 who just came out of. He was the best athlete in his Harrisburg high school and was never really challenged academically.
hmm
Um, so how do you go from? So what is? How do you go from this to being a football coach? How long have you been a football coach at Vaux?
Yeah. So I started coaching at Vaux 2021. It was
Okay.
completely by chance. So me and my dog. So I got a dog the week before COVID started. So I've had him for about a year, me and my wife, and our thing was going to the park. Like during COVID, just to get out of the house, we would go right over to the park, which is full of history. Jefferson Memorial Field,
Mm-hmm.
the athletic rec, first interracial baseball game ever in America was played right there. And I was there with the dog, just letting him get out, run around a little bit. And I see this guy I've never seen before. Uh, and again, we go there 2, 3 times a day. So I know or recognize most people. We strike up a conversation. He lets me know that he has a dog that looks similar to Dewey. We keep talking a little bit, and he's setting up some cones, little orange cones for a workout. And I was like, "Oh, what do you got going on?" He's told me that he was starting a football program at the high school down the street. And at that point, we had lived here for about a year and a half, and I knew the school, but I had never really been there, met anyone from it, because again, it was COVID, so they weren't going to class. It was just kind of an empty building for a while. And we strike up a conversation. I tell him that I live in the neighborhood and gave him my email. I said, hey, if you need any help with this program, just let me know. And before I got home, which is a minute and a half walk, I had an email buzzing on my phone, and we've been rocking out ever since. So we went from starting the program and having no kids. Like I didn't know anyone on the team. I didn't know Robbie, my partner. I didn't know the defensive coordinator at the time, and it was just the three of us. So I would just show up every day. Sometimes there would be 8 kids at practice. Sometimes there'd be 16. Sometimes there'd be 9. We never really knew till we showed up. And it was hard. Like, kids were coming from different parts of the city, relying on public transportation. We had a quarterback who was living in Southwest. Like, Southwest to get to North is not easy.
Yeah. Yeah,
as
it's
a
not.
as a 17-year-old with no car, that's a hike. But to see it go from what it was in 2021 to what it is now, man, it is something I am really, really proud of.
Well, what
Proud
is
of
it
everyone
now?
who's come through it. It's a real program now. So before we were a couple of kids who were playing around in the park. That was the first year. The second year was more of the same. The third year we became a team. Last year we made the playoffs. It did not end how we wanted by any means, by any stretch of the imagination. But we learned from that season. We learned from how that ended. And I'm excited for what we're going to do in 2024, 2025.
Man, that's amazing. So this is the kind of thing I really wanted to get into with you, because one of the things that that has been a major driving force in the past couple of years of my life, which led me to this podcast and everything, is something I call proximity to pain, right? And what I mean by that is, when I was an administrator, I would see what young people went through, right? And I was the one who was, how many kids had come in from just watching their dad beat their mom? How many kids just got beaten themselves? How many kids didn't even have a place to live, right? Like, and the reason I started this podcast is because I realized after my compassion and my empathy was constantly being it was constantly really difficult looking back, working with those young people, because I felt for them so much, right? And being an administrator, they were more than likely the kids that were acting out, so I was always dealing with them. So I had a proximity to pain, unlike most people, right? And then when you understand what I mean by that. So when I retire and I want to make a difference, and what leads me right here is this idea that what did that do to me, right? Because a guy who I had a lot of childhood trauma myself, as many of us do. I'm not, it's all relative. I understand that. But like, I just wanted to talk to other people who had that proximity to pain, who have it like you do. Like, those kids you're dealing with, they have a whole different set of issues than the kids I was dealing with. They're the same, but there's also other things. I worked in a rural area. These kids live in an urban area, things like that. So how much of your job then is helping those young men through trauma?
You want me to give you a percent?
No,
It's 100.
yes,
It's 100% of it. It's 100% of it, right? Like, that's what I think has moved our program forward. Is understanding that everyone's got a story, right? Like, we don't have a lot of coaches. So you're talking about that pain, that healing that is needed. Like, we got to do that with 5 people. Like, there are teams that have 15 coaches, 20 coaches, 25 coaches. The team I played for, I couldn't count the number of coaches that we had. So, when you have a smaller staff, like, you feel that a little bit more because you're feeling it from more people. Everyone's got a story, right? Like, everyone's got something they're dealing with, something they're bringing to you, with them to practice every day. Sometimes it's, like, they broke up with their girlfriend, or they got in a fight with their homie, or they failed a test, or like some super mundane, everyday type of story that you're expecting from a teenager. But then sometimes it's not. Like, sometimes it's something completely different. And it's something that, even as an adult who's been here twice as long as them, I've never had to deal with. So what I needed to do better of was ask that question of what happened to you instead of what's wrong with you. And when you flip that question, you're getting the same thing, right? Like you're getting this, you're asking, the reason you're asking it is the same. It's coming from a place of wanting to help, but the framing changes everything. If you ask what happened to you, it's not putting them in a negative connotation. It's like, hey, I'm here. Like, what happened? What's going on? That sounds a lot better than what's wrong with you. Like,
Yeah.
what's wrong
Yep.
with you is like the word wrong is in it. Like, I'm telling you that you are wrong, and that's not even something I came up with. That's right here. That's Oprah and Dr. Bruce Perry. So I kind of went through like a coaching boot camp this year. Woman coach V, Valencia Peterson, and her organization ODAP, Open Door Abuse and Awareness Prevention, it was created by Coach V to kind of be a healing a place of healing, not a physical place, but like she's a healer. Like that's what she does. She had went through trauma herself as a young person. Someone you should maybe have one day.
I was just
Went through a
thinking
lot of
that.
trauma
No,
herself, and she
I'm sorry. I
is
was thinking about
perfect.
future
Yeah,
guests while you were on, but
yeah,
I was thinking that.
yeah, yeah. Listen, I'm telling you, I'll help you set it up.
I
She is
appreciate it.
fantastic. But I went through her a pilot program with her this whole football season. So every Monday night, there were a couple coaches, 6, 7 of us, who would get on every single Monday, talk about the content of that book, break down chapters, talk about the struggles that we were having. It gave us such a sense of community. I'm telling you, man, like it. One of the state champions was in our group. Like was one of the teams that she worked with, and you saw growth in every single team. Like we had teams that didn't have great seasons on the field, but they grew. We had a team that won the state championship and they grew. They were sending kids to all over the country, D1 caliber athletes that are going to go on to play at Georgia, Penn State, Pitt, Illinois, like crazy places. And then you have our team who I'm telling you, like we grew so much. It was amazing to watch it and to be a part of it. And it's just exciting because there's more people, like there's some energy going around where like I had that group. I get to have this conversation with you. Some of the things I'm working on personally and professionally, I'm seeing firsthand that there's people out there that see there's healing that needs to be done, and they're finding their own way to positively impact and make that movement towards healing.
What an amazing thing for, you took this on yourself. It wasn't something you decided to do, this coaching boot camp that you call it, because you wanted to be a better you, which I will tell anybody who will listen, you want to change the world, just be a better you. Right. And then
Mm-hmm.
that stuff goes out. And if you're constantly working on you, but I find that interesting because it sounds like it was very trauma informed, like this coaching, and
Yeah.
um and it led to success on the field.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Well, think
amazing.
about it,
That's amazing.
right? Think about just how the brain works, right? Like one of the things we do now it started off before every practice, and I'll admit it, I wasn't great at doing it every practice in the beginning, but then as you build the habit, right? Like every day we would do this thing called our daily check-in where I just go 1 through 5. What are we feeling? And all the kids would put up 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest, however they were feeling from that day. And it got to the point where they were checking on each other. Like they
That's
would
great.
check on each other before practice. They would check on each other
Great.
after practice. We would have this verbiage of staying in the blue because the way the brain works, right? Like you want to be up here. You want to be in this part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex. But we're dealing with kids, right? Your brain forms from the back to the
Yeah.
front. So this part doesn't fully form till you're 25. These kids are 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. They missed, right? Their 5th through 8th grade years were COVID years. So they missed a lot of that. Hey, what does this mean? How do we do this in person? And like, we're going to see the impacts of COVID and that disruption of education a long time from now. We're going to
Yes.
see it if we don't address it. But I love that we do that daily check-in because it's one way to ground us and root us in the moment. And like if you're able to get your kids talking about the blue versus the red part of the brain, the red being the limbic system, right? The emotional part, that immediate response. You don't want to do that on the football field. You don't want to do that in the classroom. You don't want to do that outside. You don't want to do that in an argument. You want to be able to use the front part of your brain, staying in the blue. And what I learned from ODAP and what I get to teach these kids now is how to do that in high stress situations. It's all about stress management, right? Like, and it's crazy because it all connects, right?
It's
It
amazing.
connects back to the way I think about it is there's good stress and there's bad stress, right? It's all about how you manage that stress. Because all I learned in kinesiology at Temple is how to stress the body to get a positive impact, right? If you want your VO2 max to go up, you have to train this way. You're not going to increase your cardiovascular output by lifting weights. You're going to get your muscles stronger and bigger and a little more powerful, but you're not going to be able to necessarily swim better. Like, how do I get the adaptations that I want from my body? And now I can apply that to the mental and the emotional. I can apply that to the spiritual. And once you can start doing it and take that construct of like, hey, this is how you build out healthy habits, you can apply that to whatever. You can apply it
I
to
love
anything.
it. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm done. That
Okay.
was it.
Uh, you mentioned COVID, and I think there are two things that led to me retiring or leaving public education early. One was my equity work that I started doing um, 10 years ago, I guess. And I just started seeing an institution that just couldn't change to meet
Mm-hmm.
every student's needs.
Mm-hmm.
And the other was the fact that, and again, this was my own childhood trauma speaking out, right? I remember we would have meetings during COVID and all we would talk about is this and this. And I would go, what about mental health? What
Yeah.
about mental health? Yeah, we'll take care of that. We'll take care of that. But everybody just wanted to get back to normal. Well,
Mm-hmm.
what normal? I mean, the trauma that everybody has a shared trauma in this, right? So, and all I could think about was the kid with the abusive parents whose
Mm-hmm.
whose safe place is school and they have to be home now. Like,
Yeah.
I'm trying to, I'm banging the table, as they say, to go, what are we doing? And we just couldn't do it. We just, the
Mm-hmm.
institution couldn't shift. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, and then I looked up your website of the school you work at, and they have
Mm-hmm.
resilience counselors, which is
Yeah.
amazing, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so what would you, so I guess your whole philosophy then is you want to create, you're all about creating young men, right? Powerful or empowering young men. Not it's
Absolutely.
yes, winning is important, but you're building from the ground up, so to speak.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
my guy Dewey's hopping in here real quick for
Oh,
a
is he?
guest appearance.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's 100%. That's so I've one of my coaching mentors challenged me to create and write down my coaching pedagogy, and that is really just like, what's your coaching philosophy? Like, what is your goal? Because he runs an organization, he has this movement called "It's Bigger Than the Ball," um, and the idea is that it is more than just the sport that you play. Like, most people, if you think about it, you start at the bottom of the funnel, right? Or the top of the funnel and you funnel down. Most people that you coach are not going to go professional in whatever you coach them in, no matter how good of an athlete they are, no matter how much of a good coach you are, no matter how strong your program is. The majority of people who start in Little League will never get anywhere near making $1 playing their sport.
Mm-hmm.
But you can teach people things like what it means to have work ethic, or the value of working hard, or resilience, or teamwork or communication, or any of these
Mm-hmm.
things, let alone the physical attributes you gain from coaching. And part of my coaching pedagogy emphasizes that. And it's the idea that I'm not coaching you just for this 15-year-old version of you, this 16-year-old version of you. I'm coaching you for when you're 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. Like, you need to be, this is what it means to be a good man. And like, that's not stuff you know how to write down. So I got to
Mm-mm.
show it. Like, I got to just, the same way I talk to you, Mike, is like the same way I try to talk to everyone. Like, I don't want to have to switch up, because when you have to switch up, it's harder to be that role model. So like, in every situation, I just try to be as authentic to myself and like what I do and who I am. And I'm always starting from a good place, always. Like, every interaction, I want it to start off in a good place and end in a good place, like especially with the kids, because you never know with them what little piece is going to stick.
It's so true. I used to tell new teachers when they started, and it's funny, I still do it. I have students in my office now at a college level, but what my advice to new teachers always was, you have these kids in your room for 45 minutes. The best thing you can do is assume it's the only 45 minutes a day they feel safe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because if you're doing that and everyone's doing that, then you know that's going to make a difference. And feeling
Mm-hmm.
safe and feeling loved and feeling valued for young people is so important. And I mean, even proven scientifically, it's proven. Kid feels loved at school, he's going to do better. Like that's just,
Mm-hmm.
and I still find it amazing that people like you are out there and you're going on a coaching boot camp to learn how to to deal with a young person from a level that has nothing to do with football.
Mm-hmm.
And people like me are out there, and we're still doing it wrong institutionally, right? And I'm not trying to disparage my former
Yeah.
institution. I really don't want to,
Mm-hmm.
but it's no one's fault. It became really, really difficult. And I just think,
Well,
do you
it's
ever see
hard, right?
Monsters
Like
Inc?
it's yes, phenomenal
Oh,
movie.
okay. So this is all I can think of. They spend all their life saying, we got to make these kids cry, and that's going to give us energy. And then by the end, you realize, oh no, the laughing's even more, right?
Yeah.
I feel like we got
Yeah.
to a point where we know what's going to build great young people, what's going to help young people heal, and what's going to help them be the I love what you said. I'm not just coaching the 15-year-old you, I'm coaching the adult you, but we're still not doing it. Like we know the
Mm-hmm.
laughter, so to speak, metaphorically speaking,
Mm-hmm.
is what's going to
Mm-hmm.
do it, but we're still not, right? We're still trying to make them cry. And again, that's all the metaphor
Mm-hmm.
for that. But um,
Well, it's like this, Mike. Like you get it. I get it. Coach V gets it. My fellow coaches that went through the ODAT pilot program, like they get it. There's a lot of people who get it, but systems are slow to change. Education
yes,
is a system that, and systems don't go through healing processes as fast as people do. There's a lot of systems that need healing. There's the education system. There's the economic system. There is the healthcare system. There's a transportation system. Like,
yeah, yeah,
how many times are they going to quote unquote fix the turnpike? Right?
yep,
Like, there's
yeah,
systems that need healing, but it takes people to heal it first before you can get to that where
right.
the system can actually change, because systems are so resistant. People are resistant. Inertia is a real thing. Homeostasis is a real thing. And it's even more when it has to do with systems.
Well, that is that's a profound thought to me, because I'm just thinking about how hard it is for a person to change, and how hard, like, just the want to change is a
Mm-hmm.
huge journey for so
It
many people.
hurts. It
Yeah.
hurts.
And then you think about, oh, it's a system. And now I'm thinking about my old job, and I'm going, oh my God, there were hundreds of people pulling different ways. Of course it was never going to change overnight. So one of the things I wanted to ask is the hurt you see in these young men, and a whole, that's another podcast episode altogether, what it means to be a man, and what you're doing to try to, sounds like you're doing a lot to try to lessen that burden, so to speak, just to
Mm-hmm.
make it okay to cry or do whatever, be in touch with your emotion. Does it, what do you do? Like, how does it affect your life? Like, does it touch, does it hit that awkward kid from early on? Does it bring back that hurt? Because that's the kind of stuff that I'm realizing happened to me when I saw a kid who
Mm-hmm.
hadn't showered in a week and a half, and I knew his mother was neglectful or whatever, and there was pain in that kid. And looking back, it just brought me back. Not that my mother was like whatever, but it just brought me
Mm-hmm.
back to my own stuff. Does that
Right.
happen to you? Do you deal with that?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And I think for me, the hardest part is kind of like the saying, like, there's two things that can be true at the same time, right? Like, knowledge is power, but ignorance is also bliss, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you have that knowledge, it's really hard not to want to use it all the time and like use that power and make change and make impact, right? But like at the same time, like sometimes I'm like, man, what if I just didn't care? Life would be so much easier. Like the people out there who can just like walk past it and turn a blind eye to it and just like go on to the next thing. Like, would I be less stressed sometimes? And I come back to that 12-year-old kid and like that's who keeps me moving, right? Like, cause like I know how much of an impact it is. Like growing up, I was lucky. Like me and a lot of my homies, like we grew up with our dads in the house. And it was still hard. Like when you don't grow up with a pops in the house, like it's different. Like you have to become a man younger and you don't know what the heck you're doing. Like I'm well into my 30s and I'm just now feeling confident to the level that feel like I can like really bridge that gap between the younger people, right? Like the people I coach, the boys and girls at the school, and like be an anchor for them. But also I can help out mom and dad. Like that's really cool to me, is to be that in between, like that connecting fabric, because I think that millennials, like it or not, we have a very unique perspective on the world. And I think we have a very critical role to play in it, because we're that generation that kind of does bridge that technology gap. Like the way my grandma grew up is completely different on how my niece is going to grow up, right? Like my grandma, my grandmothers were like in the 30s and the 40s. Like it's going to end up being 100 years. Like it's a whole century
Yeah.
of a gap of technology, and technology is only getting faster and more aggressive every single day. Like I don't even know where you are. We've been having a conversation for this long. I don't know where you physically are located. Like there was a point where the telephone was new, the television was new, the radio was cool. Like kids don't know what an 8-track is anymore. Like a cassette tape. I tried to give someone asked for my highlight tape and I wanted to give them a DVD and they're like, "Coach, I can't play this anywhere." Like we're at a different time. Like
Yeah.
it's completely different. So I do think that like millennials are an important generation, an interesting generation, one that should be like in a position to make an impact because we can bridge some of those gaps.
It's interesting you say that. I never thought of that perspective. I know one of the things that I valued in my old role was sitting with families and
Mm-hmm.
helping one understand the other, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm not millennial, I'm Gen X, but it's
Mm-hmm.
just interesting that you say that, because that's also where I'd like my energy to go, along with helping young people. I just I just want kids to be heard, and I don't think they're always heard, right? So I really value.
Especially in times of trauma sometimes.
Yeah.
Kids are sometimes just pushed into the corner and left to deal with their own trauma with whatever people or resources or ideas they can come up with on their own. And that happens way too much.
Yep. And and it's also because a lot of that is because the parent themselves is, when they're dealing with the trauma,
Mm-hmm.
what they're dealing with, they're trying to assuage, for lack of a better term, their 12-year-old self,
Yeah.
right? That's why I ask people about, like, what is it like for you to deal with the trauma of these young people? And you still had your own you had to deal with, like, and
Mm-hmm.
like, I find that phenomenon very, very interesting. I had a guy at Temple ask me that in an interview. We're talking about kids, probably very kids similar to you. I was going for a job where I'd be working with students from the community who were not working. And he asked me, what would you do when a student's trauma turned into an outburst with you, or turned into something?
Mm-hmm.
And I used the term, and this is another thing that drove me into this exact moment. I used the term, I'd be the adult in the room, right? And what I meant by that was I would model the behavior. I wouldn't get elevated. I would make sure. And he was just so like, he was so taken by my language, he kept coming back to it, kept coming back to it. He finally goes, no, how are you going to handle your inner child's trauma when you're dealing with this kid's trauma? And I was just, I just thought it was a very thoughtful and profound question. And that's something you just mentioned. Like these, I think older people, they're doing the best they can.
Yeah,
Kids do get
everyone is
forgotten.
trying.
Yeah, everyone's
Yeah.
trying. So a couple of things before we end our conversation here. Something I want to ask. My family and I have a little ritual where every night we have a conversation. And when we talk about my daughter's 5, and we say, hey, what happened? What was the best thing that happened today? What was the most discouraging thing, most frustrating thing that happened today? What's something you learned today? What's something kind you saw today? Right. And I don't want to do that with my list, my guests, but our thought is we want our kid to be, all of us to be reminded that we got to look for that. Right. But I want to ask you, what makes you smile? What made you smile today?
I love that question. And I also love what you guys do as a family tradition, because I think that's so cool to do around the dinner table. Like that's something we did every night, was like sit at the dinner table together, break bread. And like that goes back, that's not just to my family, that goes back generations, that goes back centuries, like that goes back millennia. That's one of the oldest parts of humanity, is to sit and break bread and fellowship together over a meal.
Yep.
So shout out to you and your family for making that tradition. For me, what made me smile today? I'm stepping into my purpose. I've made a big life and professional decision to put in my resignation with the company I've been working for the last 2 years, and really commit to what I call my job, like helping the kids that are in my community have as many opportunities and options for success.
It's great. I just got to chill.
Yeah.
Because I do coaching as well, as far like life coaching and things like that. And you can find your purpose, man.
Yeah.
It's taken me a long time, but that is so amazing to hear, because so many people can't, they want to, and they can't. Like I believe service is all that really matters, right? At the end of the day, right? I journal every day, and the first three words I write are energy, family, service, right? By taking care of myself, I could do better. But I get up every day, I do my exercises, I walk. Family's everything. And with those, if I have the energy that I take care of my family, then I can serve. And that's all I want to do, is serve. And I can't take credit for that. I stole from an online coach named Brian Johnson.
Hey, everyone does. All the best coaches steal.
Yeah. So I was curious about journaling. So my very good friend of mine sent me this video of this guy talking about journaling, and he mentioned energy, family, service. And I was like, that's everything. That's absolutely right. And my back was bad. And I started taking care of that. Now every morning I'm up at 6 o'clock, doing everything I need to do, moving my body, journaling, and taking care of my family and everything before they even get up. And it's changed my life.
Love that. Yes.
But again, it's like, I don't have a podcast without that. I don't, so, all right, I want to get into our final question, because I'll explain to you first where it came from for me. And then this is the whole theme of my podcast. So,
this is the whole thing.
It's the whole thing. So my algorithm on my social media is a lot of like, what's the term? I don't want to call it self-help, but affirmations, things like that.
Positive psychology.
Yes, right. So the couple months ago, maybe in September, October, I looked at one, and it was a little reel, and there's music playing, and it said, "Oh, my therapist gave me this exercise that said, stand outside the room of your 12-year-old self. Imagine yourself going in, and what would you say?" Right? So just so you know, Jordan, like I couldn't get I couldn't get through the first sentence. I started crying because it was
Yeah.
it hit me like a
Yeah.
ton of bricks because my 12-year-old, my life at 12 was so tumultuous. And
Right.
I still think about it was a lot of trauma, right? And I couldn't unsee my bedroom, the awful rugs and the wood and the paneling, right? And I was just taken by it. And then I ran into our mutual friend Ron the next day. And he and I are pretty vulnerable with one another, and we talk about these
Hmm.
kinds of things. And I started telling him, he goes, "Yeah, I just did that." He goes, "I just saw the same thing or whatever." So that's where this all started. And now I'm on this journey to go, how can I get people who really care about young people and getting them on a right path of healing as much as I do? Because I'm still trying to heal me, right?
Hmm.
So what would you say then? Put yourself in that situation. Can you see your bedroom? Do you know, like, are
Yeah.
you, yeah, you're not that far. I'm much further from 12 than you are, but um, tell me about what you would say and how you would go about it.
So, well, one, thanks, Ron, for connecting us because I appreciate this conversation so much. Um, I've been thinking about this since you invited me on the show. So much so that I actually asked uh, I asked again, the three friends I talked to from when I was this age, I asked if anyone had a picture of me from that time. I didn't give them any context into why I was asking. I just asked. And within 3 minutes, my buddy sent me a picture of a field trip we took. I think I might have been a little older. I think I might have been 13 or 14, but I actually have the picture here. I'll send it to you so you can share it with the show.
Yeah, of
But I'm
course.
going to actually talk to that person while I do it.
Okay.
Uh, what's up, Jordan? First off, I just want to say it's good to see you again. Um, it's been a really great time since that day at Dorney Park. You've grown into a person that you're very proud of. You did it. It wasn't always easy, but you've learned a lot. Um, you took our own advice and you wrote your own story. Um, you realized at a young age that everyone has their own motives. Everyone has their own missions. It's important to have your own. It's important to stand on something or you fall for anything. Um, and you've made sure that you are not only the star of your own story, but you are the writer, the producer, the director, um, and part of the audience who's enjoying it. So that means to me that you're taking action steps towards whatever your purpose is and finding that purpose. You're taking action steps to healing. I know there were times where it wasn't easy. You grew up with a great family. Mom and dad always held it down. Siblings always held it down. You had friends and family. Shout out to the guys we grew up with. Shout out to all the friends that are still friends. Um, but you've still experienced trauma. Um, and now you have gone through the process to heal that, but that process never ends. There will be more trauma, there will be more hurt, there will be more healing to do. You are strong enough, tough enough, smart enough to overcome all of it. You have become uh, a father to two wonderful dogs. You become a husband to a beautiful wife. You have continued to grow as a brother, as a son, as a friend. You've taken on the new role of coach. You've continued to be a leader. And with that, like, I'm saying this as a 32-year-old. So to this 12-year-old you. And I'm excited to see how proud of us we are in another 20 years. So, Mike, have me back on when I'm 52.
Oh man, that was wonderful. I'm emotional actually. That's a lot of vulnerability and I really, really, really appreciate it. So once again, one more thing, because
Mm-hmm.
one of the things I want to do is not just, I want to be able to share advice. I want to be able to, I want to leave every episode with some feasible, actionable things that those of us who work with young people can maybe
Mm-hmm.
do with those young people to help them begin their healing journey now.
Facts. Yep.
So what do you
Mm-hmm.
got?
We've kind of alluded to this throughout the conversation of how important it is for the adults in the room, as you mentioned, to heal that young person that was hurt within themselves. And I think that you've already started to give people a place to begin that journey by having this podcast and posing that question and bringing people on who have explored and reflected on that idea. um, I'm going to give you a graduate level assignment to give people. So once they've completed the letter to their, or the message to their 12-year-old self, I want you to write a letter to your 90, 95, 100, 105-year-old self, or from yourself, really, I guess. Um, or you can do it as a cheers to yourself at a retirement party or at a birthday party. But whatever it is, I want you to have your listeners and your audience members and your guests to write a letter to their future self. Because I think that if you make decisions based on future you, I've said this for, you can go back and listen to Secure the Bag on Apple, iTunes, wherever. And you can hear me and my homie Will talking about future you and how important it is to emphasize and prioritize you in the future. That means you yourself, but also the people that you're going to impact in the future. So your future, your family members, your kids, your spouse, your partner, your friends. Make sure that you take care of you now so that future you can look back and be like, thank you. Because if future you thanks you, that means that you set yourself up on a path that you're proud of, that you're happy with, that you're fulfilled with, you've reached some type of success. So if you can write that letter now in your present self, it's a really fun, challenging exercise I can't take credit for. I believe it was my mentor, Michelle Horton, who had me first do this entering grad school. And the way she framed it was write a letter for your 90th birthday party where you're given a toast. And I talked about, my family that was there, my friends that were there, the work colleagues, my kids, grandkids, great grandkids. I talked about all these things, and like, what I want for the future will continue to change. But as long as I'm working towards what's my purpose and what fulfills me and what brings good to the world, and, that's the goal. So there we
Oh,
go.
man, that's amazing, man. Jordan, thank you so much. If we were in person, I'd give you the biggest hug right now. So next time I see you at the coffee shop, be
We'll link up
prepared
for a
because
coffee. Absolutely.
I'm probably going to give you the biggest hug you've ever had because this was a wonderful conversation. I really
It really
appreciate it,
was.
man.
Really was. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate your time.
Yep.
Oh, one last thing. Go Cougars, Cougar Nation.
Oh, that's your football team.
That's the football team.
Oh,
Go
okay.
Cougars, baby.
That's it. I'm a fan. I'm a fan for life, actually. So
Love it.
have a great
Got another
one.
one.
Take it easy.
Thanks, man. You too. Take care.
Please don't forget to subscribe or rate the show or leave a comment or a review. Share with your friends. Anything that can get us to more ears would be greatly appreciated. Your 12-Year-Old Self is a Fairmount Media production, and it's hosted, written, and produced by me, Mike Nicholson. Questions, comments, guest suggestions can be emailed to your12yearoldself@gmail.com. That's your 12-year-old self with the number 12 at gmail.com. The theme song is Never a Worthless Moon by Yawns. Logo design by Rose Bear Arts. Digital marketing consulting by Krista Lemon. Social media consulting by Jessica Hawk. Special thanks to Ron Cornwall and Sarah Finney. And my profound gratitude goes out to my wife, Courtney.